Pericles and Athens by A.R. Burns. We continue with but their position differed fundamentally from that of modern cabinet ministers to whom one instinctively compares them. First, they were not elected on a party ticket but individually, and though more radicals might be elected one year and more conservatives another, it remained customary to find men of varying views serving as generals together. This was not felt to matter, since the primary business of generals was not to make policy, but to carry it out. A general might even be ordered to conduct a campaign which he considered unsound. He could express his views in the assembly. But if people were bent on particular conquest, the most that would be likely to happen was that his forces would be increased, or some of his colleagues, if they were more willing, might be entrusted with the mission instead. A general, the second great difference from a modern minister, was not expected to, indeed could hardly, resign rather than carry out a policy of which he disapproved. Now, sometimes it becomes obligatory for a person of character to disobey the rulers, but don't get in a political position just to carry out your will upon the people. If you like something, you don't like something, it's a role beyond that. To do so, or even to show himself unenthusiastic too often, would have been construed as showing cowardice or lack of loyalty to the people, and with that, unless events later showed him to have been right, a general's public career would be at an end. Thirdly, the generals had no official duties in connection with the work of the assembly. Unless the council or assembly called upon him for a report or opinion, each general had exactly the same rights in the assembly as any other citizen. He had one vote, and the right to speak if the assembly chose to listen. Naturally, the generals could always ask the council to call the assembly, and to place on the order paper business which they wished to raise, but they were not the only leading politicians. In addition to politicians who frequently held office as generals or treasurers, there were other politicians who did not, but were simply leaders or mouthpieces of popular opinion, in the Greek term demagogues. Demagogues represented especially the city population of Athens, which not only properly outnumbered the peasant farmers, but could more easily attend to the assembly. Those of whom we know are always driven out from the commercial classes, always drawn out from the commercial classes. As such, there was regularly a certain tension between them and the generals, of whom a surprising high proportion were members of the old landed families, who, like Cimon and Pericles, had accepted the democracy, not unmoved by pride in its military achievements and new imperial power. Demos kept a tight rein on these aristocratic servants of his. Their work in the next century, and perhaps in this, had to be formally approved every 36 days of the grand session of the assembly, and if it were disapproved, then the general in question was deposed and might be put on trial, as happened to Pericles in the last crisis of his life. The generals, for their part, in addition to much office work at home, were expected to lead their troops in battle. An extraordinarily high proportion of those whose names are known to us were killed in action in 5th century BCE wars. It was no easy post to be a general at Athens, and far less. Remember how I said that politicians should not have legislative authority, but more of a delegative authority. Generals have even less of a thing. Instead of directing traffic and safety and, making sure the ethics are of criminal justice or something are upheld, generals have far less of a leeway of what to do. So don't get into the same thing with the rest of the military. Don't get into the military if you don't agree with what's going to what's going to happen if you move up the ranks, or what could happen to you in your lower ranks. Such was the democracy in which Pericles, after the assassination of Athens, played the leading part. He had two separate functions. First, he was one of the most popular speakers in the assembly, so much that with his usual long-headedness, he took to restraining himself from speaking on minor matters, lest the people should get tired of him. Unless the matter at issue were one worthy of his personal intervention, he let a friend or a supporter express his views. Secondly, he was one of the men frequently elected general. Not every year. That would have been no more normal for a Roman general to be a consul every year, though, as there were 10 Athenian generals and only 2 consuls, repeated generalships at Athens were more frequent. Probably Pericles did not even stand for election every year, on the same principle as that of not speaking too often. When he was general, he threw himself into what others might find the tedious work of an office with the same fiery energy that he had shown on campaigns as a soldier. People said that he was never to be seen in any street of Athens but those which lay between his home and the government offices, that he was never seen at a party in many years except when his cousin Ptolemos, the son of Megacles, so Pericles and Megacles, oh, well, Mega, not Maga, okay, was married, and even he only stayed until the first toasts. No doubt there was the usual cheerful exaggeration in such gossip, but no doubt also the social life of his youth had to go by the board. There is no reason to suppose that he missed it. He was 35 by now, and in the affairs of the state and the conversation of a group of intimate friends who came to his home, he found life full enough. Among these friends was Damon, the music master, Sophocles, fast establishing himself as the favorite dramatist of Athens, Anaxagoras, the astronomer and philosopher, and to the surprise of some Greeks, a sculptor named Phidias, a humble craftsman who worked with his hands. Not quite a demiurge, but artists that like to play God. I mean, consciously like to play God. You can call them a demiurge. But this time, too, probably soon, after he was 30, according to the usual custom, Pericles had married, and had by now 2 small sons. He named the first Xanthippos, after his father, and the second Paralos, coast dweller, which both suggested interest in the navy. It was the name of one of the 2 sacred galleys of state, also recalled the name of the constitutional progress or center party of the coast dwellers, which Pericles' grandfather, Megacles, had led 100 years ago. Pericles did not bother much about his children, however, leaving them to the women as they grew older, to slave attendants or pedagogues, like a demigod, except for children, except for people. His ideas on the subject were completely those of his age, which regarded small children as a bore, a troublesome but necessary prelude to the desired possession of grown-up sons. Besides, Pericles was busy. Neither did his wife play any significant part in the full and absorbing life which he lived among his few male friends, and a horde of political and public acquaintances and comrades in arms. We do not even know her name. If Plutarch is right in saying that she had already been married to Hipponikos, son of Callias the Rich, she was probably a near kinswoman of Pericles and an heiress, for by Athenian law a woman who had no brother had necessary to marry her nearest male relative, divorcing a previous husband, if any, so that her father's property might descend within his own patrilineal clan. In any case, Pericles' marriage was a loveless business. His wife could be no companion to him, for noble Athenian ladies were little educated and kept in almost oriental seclusion. Having done his duty by raising a couple of sons, Pericles, by mutual consent, divorced her so she could marry or remarry Hipponicus, to whom she bore another Callias, rather younger than Pericles' sons. Pericles was to pay dearly for his own or his society's shortcomings in later years, nor had Pericles yet a maîtresse and titre, life too full. The years 460 to 454 were years of astonishing achievement, of victories by land and sea, and as the phrase shows, which Thucydides quotes from a speech of Pericles' old age, the object of his most abiding love was Athens. And so the Oriental seclusion, a lot of the stuff, Muslim majority areas and not, actually came in with the colonialist. And we need to remember that when judging these other cultures. And a lot of it's exaggerations, like the status for the rich, well, the burqa and all that other stuff, and a woman who doesn't get seen in the market because she has servants go out and do it, and it was a status thing more than a ethical thing. And some women to this day insist on that sort of treatment. Not that I would put any to that.